Mysterious object was unearthed on the California shore after days of violent storms. It's not uncommon for big storms to take over media outlets for weeks on end. When hurricane season rolls around, everything from NBC to the Weather Channel packs in wall-to-wall coverage, knowing that people all over the world will be glued to their screens. In other words, this weather is must-watch news. In 2016, however, when the coast of Coronado, California was battered with El Niño storms, the news didn't just focus on the weather itself. After the system finally cleared, residents of the city were shocked to see the intense winds and rains had uncovered something unbelievable. The coast of California is no stranger to significant storms, specifically El Niños, the unusually warm systems that move over the area in late December. Even still, the damage from one particularly massive system that battered the coast of Coronado, California in 2016 was especially devastating. The residents of Coronado were quick to make their way back outside after the rains and winds passed. They were ready to clean up their town, but they certainly were not prepared for what they'd find there. When people reached South Coronado Beach, they noticed something very unusual protruding from the sandy shore. It was a massive shape of some kind, and it clearly wasn't part of a reef. What the heck was it? No one was quite sure what the strange formation was, but everyone was curious enough to want to get a closer look. Many residents had theories, but the truth would be even more wild. It would take more work to find out what this powerful storm had unearthed. Luckily, as the tide continued to wash the surrounding sand away, the answer was revealed. It was an enormous shipwreck. Everyone was in awe when they finally realized what the structure was. How amazing is it that a ship that enormous had been lying just beneath their feet all along? This storm had to be really intense in order to uncover something the size of a city block. As the surface of the ocean increases in temperature and the warm air meets much colder air in the sky, it causes intense wind and rain. Anytime an El Niño storm hits a populous area, it typically causes a hefty amount of damage. Usually the best way to prepare is by boarding up windows and doors or simply evacuating the area altogether. Obviously, the intensity of El Niño's winds and rain regularly tossed around small boats. The discovery on South Coronado Beach, however, was something completely different. This was no small boat. This thing was seriously huge. Now that enormous vessel was uncovered, everyone wanted to know where exactly it had come from. On top of that, what was it used for when it was a fully functioning ship sailing the high seas? As it turned out, the history of the ship was fascinating. Named the SS Monte Carlo, the 300-foot vessel was built in Wilmington, North Carolina in 1921. It was one of the few concrete and iron ships built after World War I. The ship was the property of the United States Quartermaster Corps until 1923, when it was sold to the Associated Oil Company of San Francisco. This company then sold it to two actual mobsters, Ed Turner and Martin Showeiler, in the early 1930s. The two men had hoped to turn their property into a sin ship during Prohibition. It was to be anchored 3 miles off the coast of Coronado Beach in international waters, so gambling, prostitution, and alcohol were all technically legal on board, or so they'd hoped. Unsurprisingly, the ship became incredibly popular. Visitors from all around came to indulge in the illegal activities it offered. The ship was by no means the first sin ship in existence, but it was the greatest. In its prime, it would host upwards of 15,000 gamblers a week. It's estimated that the ship also raked in nearly $3 million a year, by which today's standards is nearly $52 million. However, on New Year's Day, 1937, a massive storm set the ship adrift, and it eventually ran aground on the shores of South Coronado Beach. Over the next several years, the remains of the ship were slowly buried underneath the sand. That is, until the 2016 El Niño, which was strong enough to remove the sand and reveal the ancient piece of history once more. With a little help of the incoming and outgoing tide, the sand slowly revealed more and more of this former sin ship. It didn't take long before the residents of Coronado could make out the entire thing. Once people could see the entire vessel, Word of the discovery spread rapidly around the area. Everyone wanted to explore this real-life shipwreck for themselves. Can you blame them? As fascinating as the discovery was, visitors needed to be extremely careful around the remains. Because the ship was built with concrete and iron, erosion had caused the frame to develop extremely sharp edges. Albeit dangerous, exploring it might be worth it. Some rumors suggested that upwards of $15,000 worth of gold and silver coins were still on board. Even if it was just a rumor, the SS Monte Carlo remains a treasure in its own right. Can you even imagine stepping onto a beach and discovering an enormous piece of history jutting out of the sand? As damaging as El Niño storms can be, they sure can unearth some lost treasures. Share this epic underwater discovery with your friends below.